I will strike the shepherd and the sheep shall be scattered. This is a prophecy of Prophet Zachary, very famous.
We are called the Marin Corps of St. Pius X. We remain until our last breath the children, the sons of St. Pius X.
Father, what is the different groups that created by this striking of the shepherd?
The striking of this.
Well, I've got eight main ones. 8 main ones. There are some others of a smaller size, but the main ones are the Novus Ordo, the Novus Ordo Church, the Ecclesia Dei, now the SSPX, which is not the same exactly as the Ecclesia Dei, and definitely not the same as the Resistance, which is the 4th group. Then the Cassisiacum group, which is the Sanbornites. You can call them in English the Sanbornites, but you have many Cassisiacum in Europe. Most sedevacantists in Europe are Cassisiacum sedevacantists. Then the Siemeri, or the Kelleites. Now the Siemeri are more ecumenical types of sedevacantists within sedevacantism, because there is a lot of infighting within sedevacantism, and the Siemeri are in favor of peace among all cities, And then aside from the Siemeri, you have the Kelleites. Now the Kelleites, unlike the Dolanites, Siemerites, and Sanbornites, the Kelleites come from a different bishop lineage. They come from Bishop Mendes. And so they claim that the validity of the Took line is in question, whereas the Sanbornites, Siemerites, Dolanites, they all spring from Bishop Took or Archbishop Took. And then they claim to be valid, and then they claim many Sanbornites, Siemerites, Dolanites argue that the ordination, the consecration of Bishop Mendes was invalid, performed in a hotel, in a motel. So it was their big internal strife right after they separated from Archbishop Lefebvre in the 80s. I don't know if this question is solved among them, but you have the Kelleites, and they are a smaller group than the rest of them. And then you have, at last at the bottom, I put the house church, and I've seen some of them in the US. So they are those who give up on the visible Catholic Church and wait for the end of the world and pile more food stocks and pastas for this World War III. And then you have also the schismatics, which have their own separate hierarchy and refuse to recognize the papacy altogether, both in theory and in practice.
What is the link with the institution of papacy?
So the link of these groups with the institution of the papacy. So the Novus Ordo thinks that they have a valid and licit link. So that they have an ordinary link with the papacy. Now this is what they think, because their link, in truth, their link is valid because of the ignorance of people. So when people go and perform marriages to the Novus Ordo, or people in good faith and ignorant go to confession in Novus Ordo, and if it so happens that this Novus Ordo priest is still valid, the confession is valid, the marriage is valid. But it's not licit, it's not a licit link. So they claim to have licity, of course, to be the source of authority and so forth, but it's not a licit link. It's because of heresy. Licity does not exist anymore. This is what canon law says. If you're a heretic, your use of jurisdiction is not licit anymore, but it can be valid. Then the Ecclesia Dei also, they They claim that they have a link with the papacy, which is valid and licit. That's the main reason of their existence, is that they claim that if you do not connect with the Pope, you don't have jurisdiction, and therefore the sacraments of marriage and confession is invalid, same as preaching is illicit and so forth. So this is what the Ecclesia argue, and that's why they are so keen on being in touch with Pope Francis. They are afraid of not having this link, which is also baseless, because heretics are not meant to receive a licit jurisdiction. And after public sentence, that jurisdiction is invalid altogether. Then the SSPX. Well, the SSPX is between the resistance and the Ecclesia Dei. So they claim that they have now a valid and licit link with the papacy, with the institution of the papacy. So, but they won't, unlike the Fraternity of St. Peter, they won't be too explicit about it, because half of their constituency, you may say, is against that or feels uneasy about it. So in places like France, they won't mention it very much. You know. In Asia, they will admit it. They won't be loud about it, but they will admit it, that their marriage cases are submitted to the diocese, that their jurisdiction for confession and everything comes from Novus Ordo. That they will admit it, but they won't be loud about it either. You know, only in the most liberal places of the SSPX do they insist on this. And then the resistance. Well, we have a link with the papacy. It's true, which is a valid link, but we claim that this jurisdiction of the Novus Ordo is illicit. So we recognize the validity of the papacy of today, because it has not been taken down. It is still there. You know, it's the Church being a visible society. The little clown on the balcony of St. Peter is still there, and still is at the controls. His election was stolen. His election is not canonical, but he is at the control. You know, it's like those popes of yours who kill their predecessors, then canonize them. They became de facto popes. So it's an unjust but valid jurisdiction. It's an illicit jurisdiction. We cannot use this jurisdiction on Novus Ordo under pain of mortal sin. If you know that such and such is a heretic, you cannot approach him for acts of jurisdiction, confessions, marriages, and any other acts of jurisdiction. These acts are illicit, you know. So when we say valid but illicit, it's quite serious. It's quite serious, because we say we cannot touch that Novus Ordo jurisdiction and make use of it under pain of death. That's what illicit. Something. The word illicit seems very mild, you know, for us, but in fact it's very strong. You know. Like the mass of a schismatic Orthodox priest is valid, but it's illicit. That's the problem of this mass. So we are horrified. We will not attend. No Catholics attend the mass of the schismatic Orthodox priest. You know. But it's simply illicit. You know. Illicit because it's schismatic. And Cassisiacum, they have a link with the institution of the papacy, even though they are sedevacantists. They have a link. It's a material link. They feel obliged to keep a link with today's papacy because of the dogma of the uninterrupted apostolic succession. It's a dogma that there is a succession on the seat of Peter until the end of times, because the papacy is of divine institution. So in all our manuals of theology, in all the teachings of the fathers and the doctors of the church, they all say, and they are unanimous on this, that there will be an uninterrupted apostolic succession. There can be sedevacante, but not interruption. Whereas if the Pope is not valid, and if there is no Pope in Rome right now, there is no more valid cardinals and everything. So it's not just the Pope himself who is gone, but all his cardinals and all his bishops, and the whole papacy has been wiped out. Now, I would say wisely, and in this we agree with him, Bishop Gérard des Lauriers said that cannot be. That cannot be. We as Catholics, we connect physically with the papacy all the way down to St. Peter and to our Lord. And so that's why they have to make a distinction. They make a distinction, which is a Cassisiacum distinction. That was Father de Laurier came out with it when he was not even a bishop in the late 70s, and he was near Toulon, where I used to reside in Toulon at the time. And then my dad was showered with Cassisiacum papers via the mail, and that's the theory that he have. And so, and then the bishop who proposes this theory now is Bishop Sanborn. He's very faithful to the Cassisiacum theory. And the most sedevacantists in Europe are following also Cassisiacum. They are not, you cannot say they are hardcore sedevacantists. They are mild. It's a milder theory than the hard sedevacantism. And then this has created a rift. But before we talk about the rift, you have the Siemara and the Kelleites. So Siemara and each time I see the Siemara or the Kelleites, their sedevacantism is Francis is not the Pope altogether. I'm not aware that the Kelleites are Cassisiacum. I'm not aware. Perhaps they are. I can't. But so you are moving with even with the Siemara. You are moving more on undiluted sedevacantism, utter rejection of Francis as a Pope altogether, in any way, in any matter, you may say. And then the Dolanites that have separated, that are separating now from the Sanbornites. They used to be united. I hear that with the death of Father Shekada, the split is emerging among the sedevacantists. These were the Took-line sedevacantism, which is a classical line sedevacantism, which is a dominant line in the United States. And so the Bishop Sanborn implores them not to fight. Let's not fight. Let us stay together. But the Dolonite says, no, you are a compromiser because you still recognize Francis in a snide, hidden way, which is not good. And so the Dolonite, they are pure sedevacantists. If you are a heretic, ipso facto, automatically, immediately, you are out of the church. And so in no way whatsoever, neither material nor formal, can you be a pope. So their link with the papacy is theoretical. It's theoretical. So they still say et unam sanctam catholicam et apostolicam ecclesiam. They believe in the apostolicity of the church. They believe in whatever is written in their theology manuals that they have on their bookshelves. But that theory does not apply to any human subject breathing on the face of the earth. So it's just a theoretical link. And like all three others, they refuse to make any mention of Francis. That includes Bishop Sanborn, who will not mention the name of Francis in the canon of the Mass. So all sedevacantists are all united on the so-called unacum thing. Unacum in Latin means only and, not united with, which is an obvious way to refute the unacum theory. They are also confused on the vocabulary of unacum. So but the Dolanites are hardcore sedevacantists. Now, the problem with sedevacantism is that it is necessarily going to split and split and split and split. You know, not that we say that we did not split because we were thrown out, the resistance was thrown out, expelled by the SSPX. But and these are it's a misery of the times. But I would say because the key issue of sedevacantism, with us at least, is that if you can declare the loss of office because you believe someone is a heretic, there is no peace in the church anymore. If I believe that you who are interviewing me that you are not a member of the church, I can throw you out by my own authority, you know, or I can throw out my bishop, or I can throw out people from office by my own opinion, you know. And so the importance of one's own opinion becomes too big, you know. A little bit like, I don't say that they are Protestants, but like Luther said, we got rid of the Pope and now everybody is a Pope. You know. Now, if if I have the power to, by the sheer power of my opinion or my conviction that someone is a heretic, if I have the power of deposing someone from his office, then it's chaos. That's why we always invoke that there has to be some public sentence. There has to be some, to avoid this chaos. Not that heresy has no consequence on the authority of its holder. It has a consequence ipso facto. But not, it is not complete. It's not fully extensive. You know, with the loss of liceity of a heretic, which means something very grave, that is that you cannot touch it without contracting mortal sin. With the loss of liceity will come the loss of validity. Once a sentence is passed, but not before. That's why, you know, when Nestorius blattered his heresies, everybody is separated from him. But then they still have, via St. Cyril of Alexandria, to apply to Pope Celestine for the removal, the actual removal of Nestorius. You know, they still have to apply for his removal, and then he was removed. Then the validity is gone, you know, because he's not sitting there at the controls. You know. But none of the three main sedevacantist groups will have anything with it, with this theory. You know. And then when they see that a resemblance, when the Dolanites see a resemblance of the Cassisiacum thesis with the position of Archbishop Lefebvre, which is now the position of the resistance, then they are furious, and then they attack the Sanbornites. Then their bad luck is that in the US they are a lot smaller. Bishop Sanborn has organized a lot better than the Dolanites. But the Dolanites are dominant in South America. And then the house church and the schismatics, they got no link with the papacy, either in theory. They have given up on the idea of the papacy. It's gone. You know, it has failed. The devil has prevailed on the visible church, and that's why they are house church. They won't trust anyone outside of their house. And so outside of my house, there is no salvation. I'm waiting for the 3 days of darkness. Everybody is going to get killed in the darkness outside. And then the schismatics, of course, who have rejected papacy altogether, entirely. You know. And the heresies of Pope Francis don't make things simpler, because when Francis went to Greece, a schismatic Orthodox priest called him a heretic, and I can only say to that schismatic, "You're right, he's a heretic." So I agree with the schismatic. You know, doesn't make me a schismatic. But the conversion of the schismatics is becoming very difficult, because you have to tell them to come back in the Catholic Church, which is endowed with the papacy, and then you have to tell them, no, don't touch, he's a heretic. You know, very difficult, you know, almost impossible, morally speaking.
the canonical relations with Francis, Father.
So the canonical relations of all of these groups with Pope Francis. Well, we touched it a little bit. Well, in Novus Ordo, the canonical relation is total. There's a complete canonical relation. Now, with the Ecclesia Dei, the Fraternity of St. Peter, it's total, yes, but they are persecuted. So, in half of the diocese, or more than half of the diocese, the Novus Ordo bishop will have nothing to do with them and refuses to have them. And so, because they recognize the jurisdiction of Novus Ordo, they will go only in the places where they are allowed by the local diocese. And now Francis is curtailing the number of places that these people can use. Now they went back to Rome and then they pleaded to Francis, and Francis says, okay, you got your own Latin Mass charisma. And then he says, thank you, Francis. And then this is the feast of the chair of Peter, and then we'll have a special Mass of Thanksgiving. You're a great Pope, you are great, thank you. But the persecution of the Ecclesia Dei has entered into a new level with motu proprio traditionis custodes, which means actually prison warden of tradition, not the keepers. Like when St. Paul was in chain, he had custodes, and they were keeping him. So Francis keeps tradition, would like to keep tradition, as St. Peter in prison, and he would like to have the custody around the neck made tighter and tighter. So he's trying to throttle it. He's worried about his image. He doesn't want an excessive counter-reaction, so that's why he invited the Novus Ordo, the Ecclesia Dei, to visit him, and they had a talk. And honestly, the Ecclesia Dei told us what was the content of these talks and of this meeting, which is not the case for the SSPX. See, the SSPX has a similar relationship with the Novus Ordo. Now they are regularized. So what they mean is that their canonical link is total with the Novus Ordo. So they claim now, with the Fraternity of St. Peter, to have the same canonical link with the Novus Ordo. But it's almost total. So, as Bishop Fele said, this link is missing the stamp, the signature. But it's there. Because the Novus Ordo in Rome understand that they have to manage their own faithful, their own constituency. And so that's why when Father Pagliarini visited Pope Francis, as he did 2 or 3 weeks ago, so he visited Pope Francis, the only thing we hear about the meeting, after the meeting, is that the meeting was very cordial. But we will not be told about the contents. That's dangerous. That's very bad, So, because unlike the Fraternity of St. Pierre, who are honest, they have a link with the Novus Ordo and they make no qualms about it. Now, the SSPX has a link, but they won't tell you the extent and the nature of that link, unless it is found out by the various priests within the SSPX. So it remains hidden for most. Now, for some, it's not so hidden, but for those who wouldn't like to hear about it, it has to remain hidden. So it's a very dangerous situation, I must say, for the SSPX. Then the link of the resistance to the Novus Ordo. Well, there is a formal link, but it's obstructed by the heresy in Rome. So we admit that Novus Ordo Church can have a valid jurisdiction, but it is not for us. It's for those who are still laboring under ignorance, who are excused by this ignorance, especially in the Philippines. I don't know if there are many ignorant people left in the West. Probably there still are some, but the link is obstructed by a heresy. Heresy is an obex. Heresy prevents you to exercise a jurisdiction that you have. At the moment of heresy, it falls. At the moment before you are even sentenced, if you deny Our Lady's Immaculate Conception, you are not allowed to perform marriages and acts of jurisdiction. You are not allowed to preach anymore. You don't need to wait to receive a paper or a phone call of your bishop forbidding you to preach. The moment you deny the Immaculate Conception, you are out. You know. So that's why we say there is a formal link, but it's completely obstructed. You know. Whereas the Cassisiacum, they say there is a material link, but the formal link is gone. There's when you say there is a material link, it amounts to nothing, because a material sin is no sin. You know. So if you completely forgot that it was a Friday, and you ate meat on Friday, you committed a material sin. You know. Maybe unless there is a negligence, but imagine there was no negligence. There was no negligence on your part. You are not. You are very busy. Your mind was very occupied, and you didn't have the time to think about it. And you were in a place where they are cooking for you. You know, like you are on a ship. You know, working with other Filipinos. And then there they put meat there for breakfast, and then you start to eat, and then you realize. So this is called a material sin. It's not a formal sin. So a material sin is no sin at all. So a papacy which is merely material is no papacy at all. You're just material. So material in theology means it has the appearance of sin, but it is not a sin. So that's their link. So they don't have any real, formal, canonical link with Pope Francis right now. And then nothing is happening between the Siemera and the Kelleites and Pope Francis. Nothing is happening between the Dolanites. It's completely dead. There is absolutely nothing because they don't recognize him to have any jurisdiction. And then with the house church and schismatics, with schismatics especially, since there is no pope, well, there's no point to bother having any canonical relation with him.
The Francis nature.
The nature of Francis. So what's the nature of the monster? You know, so what's the nature of the dragon? Well, of course, for the Novus Ordo, Francis is a good pope. You know. So he's a pope of smiles, he is a pope of hopes, he is a pope of mercy and compassion and all that. And he is to be followed, you know. So he's a good pope. He's not so much a superstar as John Paul II was, you know. And so he hasn't got the polite ways of Benedict XVI, you know. And he hasn't got the charisma of John Paul II by far, but they think he's a good pope and he's to be followed. Now the Ecclesia Dei, they just met Francis, so they say he's a great pope, he's a good pope, he's good to us, but they are obliged to say that he's also bad, you know. But they can't. So like some others, they can't speak about it too much. Some of them do, some of them don't. It's a mixed picture. And then they say we have to submit to him. We still have to submit to him. The deal with him is still viable, so they went to Rome and they concluded that the deal with him is still workable. You know, that was their conclusion. So Francis is good. You may say he's bad. He's good and bad. You know, there's a yin and yang in Francis. And then like the SSPX, the Ecclesia Dei, they have their liberal wing and their conservative wing. So the liberal wing would be honest. They would say they would even call Francis a heretic, you know, and then they would be very much disturbed by Traditionis Custodes. Whereas you would say the left wing of the Ecclesia Dei would say, well, there was Traditionis Custodes and we were worried, but we are not worried anymore. Then the SSPX, Well, they say Francis is good and bad, but he's more bad than good. So they do pick up the bad things in Francis. Not as much as the others, but when Francis is very scandalous, they do pick up what he does and they publish the evil that he does. But they still insist on submitting to him, canonically. They still insist, no matter how bad he is, there is nothing that Francis can do to sever the canonical relation with the SSPX. So we were hoping, in 2012 that the scandals in Rome, or in 2013, we were hoping that with the coming of Francis, the SSPX would backtrack and sever the canonical relation with the Novus Ordo, with the Novus Ordo papacy, but it did not happen. Yeah. Because they want to say that there is still something good enough for us to be able to work with them. And then they argue that their position is more prudent than the position of the Ecclesia Dei, because they've been able to manage for themselves a little independent corner within the recognized realm of the Novus Ordo. And for the resistance, well, Francis is bad, he's a bad pope, because he's a heretic, and because he's a heretic, he's to be avoided. Avoidance is a duty. And now, to avoid a heretic comes from the divine law. It's in the Epistle of St. John, it's in Galatians, and elsewhere. As soon as someone is a heretic, he must be avoided. It's your first duty, is to avoid him, to avoid the contagion. COVID is fake, of course, but it's there that the distancing is important. So we observe the distance. God is love, keep distance. If you want to keep the love of God, you must keep the distance from what is opposite with God. So he must be avoided. And for the Catholicism, the Pope is bad, he's heretic, and he's fake mostly. So he's just like John Paul II was fake for them, for the most. Now Francis is even faker. But there is always a little material corner that remains. So the little material stake shrinks, with each successive Novus Ordo Pope. But they keep always that material link, which infuriates the Dolonites. Then the Simera and Kellites, well, he's bad and heretic and he's fake. And the Dolonites, Francis' nature is just heretic, utterly fake. House Church and schismatics is heretic and fake.
The resistance in each other.
For these people. So, well, the Novus Ordo says, you are not in communion with the church, not in communion. That's their big thing. So in Buisan, the local priests, they try to do everything. They are invalid, and they had to apologize because they call the boss, are they valid or not? Yeah, they are valid. Say not in communion. That's the big thing, because it's a vague notion. They were excommunicated and everything. So that's what they think of the resistance. Now the Ecclesia Dei believe also that the resistance is schismatic, because they call Archbishop Lefebvre schismatic. He entered into a schism by consecrating bishops without the permission of Novus Ordo Pope. So they call us. They also believe that we are schismatics. Now in the SSPX, it's interesting. It's interesting because then again there is an internal split of opinion within the SSPX. So some priests will talk to us and maintain friendly relations, but they won't join us either because they view us as weird, as a bunch of crazies and excessive. So because these priests believe that they can still do good for tradition by working with the SSPX. Just like the SSPX believes it can do good for tradition by working with the Novus Ordo. It's always the same disease. So the conservative side of the SSPX maintains polite relations with the resistance. I would say it's a shrinking minority within the SSPX, because the others are exasperated by the resistance. And to the point, like Father Lenné and others, to the point of teaching that the resistance is de facto schismatic, that we are sedevacantists, that we are de facto schismatics, we are like the Donatist heretics.
Even my wife,
Yes.
mother said, Father got
Says that we are schismatics.
Casey are no longer Catholic.
She's no longer Catholics, yes. Now, because we get from the same priory, there is one priest who is very friendly, I won't mention his name, and Father Cacho, who says we are not Catholics anymore. So there is an utter split internally on what to say about the resistance. It's because those priests who are friendly with us, they were forced, because they want to stay on the Titanic, because it's nice and warm and there's plenty of light there. They want to stay on the Titanic, so they reluctantly notice that the ship is sinking. So it's against their will that the society conducts canonical relations with the Novus Ordo hierarchy. It's against their desires. And so that's why they don't treat us wrongly, because this is our position. They wish the SSPX had the resistance behavior towards the New Rome. They wish. But it's only a wish, it's not a will. They don't will it. And so that's why they stay in the SSPX. But deep down they agree. Like on COVID, some of them had the opposite position as Father Pagliarani on stupid COVID. But and then they clearly see that Archbishop Vigano, Bishop Williamson are anti-vax. So they wish that their own superior general had the same position. But it's a wish, it's not a will. They will not go to Menzingrad and bang on the table, or that's no problem for Menzingrad either, because what Menzingen is asking is that they don't take a public stance against the stance that Menzingrad is taking. So that's what they say about us. Now, we are not our own judge, so there is nothing the resistance says about the resistance. Or maybe what the resistance says is that we are a crippled army. We are an army of cripples, rejects and dejects. We are survivors. But a claim is about ourselves is not an excessive claim. We just think this is a reasonable position. If we submit canonically to the Novus Ordo, we are going to be infected, as the SSPX is. The SSPX has in its ranks modernists now, like Father Paul Robinson, who is a classical modernist. So he is not just ecclesiaizing, He still says the Latin Mass, but Loisy was saying the Latin Mass. Loisy was a founder of modernism. No, Father Robinson says Latin Mass, but he's also a biblical modernist. So, and this is what happens when you get too close with the Novus Ordo. Now, what will the Cassisiacum say about us? They say the resistance is wrong and compromise with heresy. We are compromised with heresy because we recognize, a heretic as Pope. That's what they say. Compromise with heresy. So we are. I would say, I won't say that Bishop Sanborn thinks we are heretics, but that we are stinking liberals, definitely. You know, that we are a bunch of losers and compromise with heresy, and that there is a moral obligation to stay away from us. I think that's his position. You know. Now the CMRI and Kiliites, wrong. Yes, we are wrong. We are almost heretics. CMRI also has varying position. When they are in position of, I've seen that in Australia, when they are in position of weakness, they are tolerant, but when they are in position of strength, they hit us really hard, you know. And they put a total moral duty on people to stay away from us. That's when they are in a position of strength, you know. Maybe they are changing, but I don't know. That's what I've experienced for a while with them. And for the Dolonites, the resistance is heretical. We are heretics. We are filthy heretics. And so we belong to a heretical church because we dare to desecrate the canon of the Mass by putting the name of a heretic in the canon of the Mass. So we are horrible heretics. And for the schismatics Orthodox, they call us heretics. You know, the Orthodox call the Catholics heretics, not just schismatics. We call them schismatics. We try to be polite. We don't want to make things worse. But for instance, a schismatic Orthodox says our use of unleavened bread for the Mass is a heresy. We must use leavened bread for the Mass. If you don't, you partake in the heresy of the Judaizers. You still endorse the law of Moses. We are heretics for them. You know.
Tradition.
What tradition for these groups? Well, it's in the Novus Ordo. Tradition is excluded because it's the Novus Ordo. Whereas there is tradition, there is no Novus Ordo, and whereas Novus Ordo, there is no tradition. Normally, you know, the Novus Ordo is the denial of the tradition of the Catholic Church. So they exclude, they try to combat, they try to, you see, Francis tries to contain, he would love to have it to die, you know. He say, I grant permission to the traditional Mass on condition that it will diminish and that the permission will be granted less and less, you know. For him, the Latin Mass is like a drug, a dangerous substance. So you see, when you deal with drug addicts, you give them a dose, but it must be less than yesterday. So they are excluding tradition, you know. Whereas in the Ecclesia Dei, tradition must coexist with modernism. You have, they say, we will not fight you, Pope Francis. The two masses are the valid expression of the lex orandi of the Church, which is exactly what Benedict XVI said in his motu proprio, you know, Summorum Pontificum. So these are the two expressions of the lex orandi of the Church, and so they will not criticize Vatican II and the Novus Ordo Mass. That's the more liberal wing of the FSP. Now, the more conservative wing of the FSP will attack the Novus Ordo Mass and will attack Pope Francis in private, you know. In not so much viewed sermons on YouTube, perhaps. There may be something that you can find, but I'm not sure if it's easy to find sermons of the FSP against Pope Francis Panchamama, you know. There's not much. I don't know what they said about the Panchamama. So when Francis is bad, they prefer to be quiet because they want to coexist. They want the crocodile to live in friendly relationship with the passing tourists, you know, in the pond of the crocodile. Whereas the SSPX, they coexist with the tradition, coexists with dying modernism. There is a distinction there, and this may be the opinion of the conservative within the FSP, that we coexist with the Novus Ordo because we know that the Novus Ordo is dying. So as the Novus Ordo dies, there will be only us. So we're going to grow and grow and grow until there is no Novus Ordo left. Now, that may be true in some places of the world, but it's not true in the Philippines. In the Philippines, we don't see a spectacular growth of the SSPX and with respect to the Novus Ordo. But they want to coexist. So what we see in the Philippines, they are not developing missions aggressively. At least in Cebu, I haven't seen much of great effort to multiply the missions. They've got many more priests than the resistance, and they are doing so little. So in Cebu proper, Cebu Island, Camotes, Camiguin, and perhaps Mindanao one day, if it continues like that, the number of the resistance faithful will be greater than SSPX faithful. And in Bohol also. In Bohol, the SSPX wasn't there for 2 years. They've been wiped out. So all the SSPX faithful of Tagbilaran went to the diocesan Latin Mass or back to the Novus Ordo. They all went back. So it's been a disaster. So this coexistence with dying modernism is not happening, at least in the Philippines. Now in France, which is a more conservative part of the SSPX, you could say it's kind of the, you got to admit it's kind of the case, and less and less priests are saying the Latin Mass. My own cousin, who is a Carmelite priest, and he was in the Novus Ordo, Father Bruno, who is a Carmelite, very nice man. So he was regular Novus Ordo Carmelite, saying the Novus Ordo Mass. And now he's saying the traditional Mass. So he was ordained in the Novus Ordo, saying the Latin Mass for years. And because he's a Carmelite, and he reads St. Teresa, and so he has some spirituality, then he realized that the switch has to be made. So he has made the switch to the traditional Mass, without passing through the Ecclesia Dei or SSPX or us, for that matter. So it's true. I think in places it's the assumption is true, but it's not what we see in Asia. And what we tell the SSPX about this? Well, the Novus Ordo is dying anyway. So why do you need to join them? Why do you need to join something which is dying anyways? Why don't you keep your position secure? Because you see, like when the dragon falls, in Tolkien, the dragon falls in the abyss, and in the abyss, so he's gone. So Gandalf turns around and looks to his friends, and then the tail of the dragon catches the leg of Gandalf and drags him down. In cauda venenum. So beware of the tail of the dragon. Maybe he looks like he's falling. It can still catch you, with something, infect you before he dies. So that's their position with. So tradition can coexist with the intent of speeding up the death of modernism. Now the resistance opposes modernism. So we oppose the Novus Ordo and the Vatican II. We condemn Vatican II altogether. We declare Vatican II heretical. We are no qualms into saying that Francis is a heretic, because it's true. So we oppose all this modernism, but we pity the minores. That is, there are people in the Novus Ordo who are marooned there. And there's got to be for them a valid jurisdiction for them to make valid confessions, for instance, or valid marriages. So when a married couple of the Novus Ordo comes back to us, we do not convalidate the marriage, because that marriage was valid. They approached the Novus Ordo for marriage in good faith, and they were validly married. So same thing. So because we have a doubt on the ordinations, on the validity of the ordination, a doubt then we advise them, if they ask us the question, we advise them to make a general confession when they come back. So, as far as the question of validity within the Sordo, we don't exclude validity, but we don't admit it altogether. We lament that now the SSPX in many places welcomes Novus Ordo priests to their priories without asking them to be convalidated from holy orders. So that's why even on the questions of validity, our position is being very different with the SSPX. That's another issue that we have with them. But unlike the sedevacantists, we pity the minores, and then we say the Novus Ordo, despite being a killing ground, the Novus Ordo still contains people who save their soul, who are still going to heaven. It's still the case. And that is very, very much to be seen in the Philippines. With many new people we are finding in Cebu and in Leyte now, and in Camiguin, in many places in Mindanao, and certainly Father John in Luzon. I'm going to meet Father John next week. We clearly see that these were good people and making all efforts that, to keep the law of God and to save their souls. So we cannot throw the baby with the water of the bath. It's not possible. That would be nice. It's more logical. It seems more logical and more expedient to throw the whole thing, but we can't. We have to distinguish the baby and the water of the bath. So we try to hold tight to the baby of the Novus Ordo people, still with the Catholic faith, and let the water stream down, and be washed away. That's our position. So we don't condemn all Novus Ordos to hell. It's not a fact. We are very worried that many people in the Novus Ordo, more people than before, go to hell, in Novus Ordo. Mind you that, Saint Leonard in his famous sermon says, most Catholics, and he said it in his time, most Catholics go to hell. And when the church was about to canonize him, they say, hey, there is this sermon there. Isn't his sermon crazy? And so they had to appoint a commission to analyze his sermon. And the Catholic Church, in a way, canonized his sermon. His sermon, which means to say that most Catholics go to hell. That's so the Catholics went to hell even before, way before Vatican II. Novus Ordo is certainly a bigger killing field. But we see good people, and we see people who are saying the rosary every day. And Our Lady promises, if you wear the scapular and say the rosary, or if you just say the rosary, I will not abandon you at the hour of your death. How can Our Lady abandon people at the hour of their death when these people say 53 times a day, pray for us now and at the hour of our death? Or 153 times. So we see all those people who were fervent, who were saying the rosary, they were serving their souls, despite saying the Divine Mercy Litany. When they join us, we tell them, dump the Divine Mercy Litany. We explain to them, it's condemned twice, under the same Pope, John 23rd. Actually, the Church condemned the Divine Mercy when John 23rd was a Pope, twice. And the removal of the picture was asked by the Polish bishops. And at the behest of the Polish bishops was Divine Mercy condemned twice by Pope John 23rd. So I say that for the sedevacantists because some of them don't think that John 23rd was a Pope. There is something good that John 23rd did, at least there they need to know. So the Cassisacum, they oppose all the Novus Ordites. So tradition opposes all things Novus Ordo. I don't see any compromise with Novus Ordo in Cassisacum and the others, except, and it's a problem And that's why you have a distinction between the Siamarai and the Cassisiacum and the Dolonites. Now the Siamarai, despite being, wanting to be nice to everyone, the Siamarai uses the new rite of Holy Week. So that's, and because of that, the other sedevacantists blame the Siamarites. But because the new Holy Week was promulgated by Pius XII, Siamarite says we have to be logical and consistent. We have to be consistent. If you say that he is the Pope, you must obey him. Because that's one of the ad hominem arguments of the sedevacantists. If you say that Francis is the Pope, you must obey Francis because he's the Pope. If someone is the Pope, you must obey him. So the Siamarite retort to the other sedevacantists, if Pius XII is the Pope, we must obey Pius XII because he's the Pope. He's the one who made the new Holy Week. And therefore all of us should have the new Holy Week. But the new Holy Week is made by Annibale Bonini, especially the Good Friday ceremony, which I can't in conscience celebrate. I don't have so many problems with the rest. But the other sedevacantists tell no, because if you obey Pius XII on this, you obey Bonini, who is a heretic, and so you are a heretic. And so the other sedevacantists attack the Siamarai on the question of the Holy Week. And also Siamarai has also other practical forms of liberalism. So you can say there is something not so traditional about the Siamarai among the sedevacantists. And then and there's a lot of also practical liberalism among some sedevacantists, especially in Europe, where modesty is not a big deal for them, and other manifestations of practical liberalism. So there you can be very surprised and find instances of liberalism among the sedevacantists. Good.
Good again.
All right. So the Dolonites and tradition, well, it's just us. It's just us and our own hierarchy. Whereas you can see Siamarai, they are more ecumenical, and even Cassisiacum. Father Bishop Sanborn would like them to say it's all of us sedevacantists. That he would love to. No. The Dolonite says no. It's just us and our own hierarchy, our own bishops. We are the only ark of salvation, which is dangerous. Now, mind you, we don't. Unlike the Fraternity of Saint Peter and unlike the liberal of the SSPX, we don't view the sedevacantists as schismatics. They are not schismatics. What we wonder is when Providence, and Providence will, it's a Fatima solution, when Providence grants us a good Pope again, will these contraptions of Cassisiacum, Siamarai, and Dolonites and Kellyites, will they submit to this Pope once a good Pope is granted to us? There is a quote of Saint Robert Bellarmine that a man who has nothing to do with a Pope who commits heresy is to be excused from having nothing to do with him. The only thing is that he must submit to a Pope once a good Pope is granted. That's our question. That's what we worry, Because, look, it has happened in the past, in history. Pius VII made a wrong decision to convalidate and recognize those French bishops who were put in place by Talleyrand, by the French Revolution. The bishops who were faithful to Pius VI and who had refused the rights of man and refused the French Revolution were exiled, were thrown out of their diocese, and another hierarchy was put in place by the French Revolution. In the Concordat with Napoleon, Pius VII took the decision to recognize those bishops appointed by the French Revolution. And so justly the bishops of what became the Little Church were angered, you know, and then they refused to submit to Pius VII, and then they created their own little church. It's very sad, you know. And so what we are worried is what will these people do when God grants us a good pope again, you know, to gather all these scattered sheep, you know. So we say that the opinion on a heretical pope is just an opinion. You shouldn't make a religion out of it. That's very worrisome. And if you condemn everybody but yourself, aren't you creating your own visible church? That's why the resistance is obliged. We are obliged not to create our own little visible church. And indeed, Bishop Williamson gets that repeated complaint. Why don't you lead? Why don't you even behave like Archbishop Lefebvre? You know? And Bishop Williamson refuses to take this lead and to lead as much as Archbishop Lefebvre did, because he's conscious that he hasn't got the same weight as this prelate, you know, who was an apostolic delegate, you know, for an entire part of the world. You know. So because he's not keen at all to create a visible hierarchy, you know. I haven't mentioned them in the chart, but you also have the conclavists, sedevacantists, who create their visible church to the point of electing a pope. You know, I've not mentioned, because most of them are weird. It's Palma de Troya. They are very weird, and then both the Sanbornites, Siemerites, Kellyites, Dolanites, they all agree that it's not practicable. That if they do that, it creates so much more problems. Now they show some reason there, you know, that gives them a chance that if a good pope is granted to us again, they can join him, you know. Because I'm convinced there are many decent guys in these places, decent people, you know, and I don't mind to have friendly relations with them. And then when a sedevacantist comes to my chapel, I don't deny him the sacraments. The only time I did, I had to apologize, you know, because I was wrong. I did it once only, but the only time I did, my others were very painful, you know, and causing chaos, you know, spreading their leaflets and so forth. But the only one I did exclude one of the sacraments, I had to go back to him and humbly apologize and say that I was wrong. You know.
What if it's a priest?
Well, if it's a priest, I keep friendly relations. If the man does not condemn me as a heretic or anything, why should I condemn him? Because it's an opinion. I view it as an opinion. And if he views his opinion as an opinion, what can I say? Because the theologians before Vatican II never came with a clear sentence. You know, they all scattered on the universe on what to say about the issue. You know, most famously, the Dominicans and the Jesuits. The Dominicans don't agree with Saint Robert Bellarmine. You know, and our Jesuits also who differ with Bellarmine. So there is such a difference of opinion on the matter. So if he's a sedevacantist and if he tells me that it's just an opinion, what can I say? And this is what Archbishop Lefebvre did. Archbishop Lefebvre famously tolerated Father Coache, who was not only a priest working for him in France, but Father Coache was a figurehead of tradition in the 70s and 80s. You can see Father Coache is on all the pictures. When there was a big pilgrimage in Rome or in Lourdes or anywhere, a big gathering, there is this figure of Father Coache, you know. Because he held it as an opinion. And he was told, Archbishop Lefebvre, if you hold it only as an opinion, it's fine, you know. You'll be independent, not a member of the SSPX, but you'll be independent. And he did the same with others, with Father Rafali, who was working in Nîmes, if I'm not mistaken, you know. And after the death of Archbishop Lefebvre, Father Schaeffer also had this opinion. And then I can name one. There's one even within the SSPX, he has this opinion. and he's in the Neos SPX. It's very strange. He's still with the Neos SPX, and he holds it as an opinion, you know. But the problem of the sedevacantists, they make it a religion, or at least I would say in the case of Bishop Sanborn, they would say you commit mortal sin if you hold to that position. They are dogmatic. They make a dogmatic issue. Whereas the more you study it, the more you see that the opinions are completely different on this question, you know. And then the tradition as to house church and schismatics, no, it's just us. And it says there is no Catholic tradition, you know. There's only the Orthodox tradition, or there is only our tradition is the right tradition.
But agrees with resistance on.
There are agreements with the resistance. Well, they agree to disagree with a Novus Ordo. So when I visit a Novus Ordo priest, I agree to disagree with him. So sometimes they invite us to take lunch, or so we go there, and we don't agree. So they have to stop. So we ask the Novus Ordo to stop saying the new Mass, to abandon their theology, to throw out their modernist teachers, to put back the correct way of the cross, to use the proper ritual and proper Holy Week, etc. So we are asking them to cease and desist. We ask them with all charity, you know, and they are in danger of damnation, and they are leading their flock to hell. So but Francis is Pope. You know, they can still claim a link with the visible church. Yes. Now the Ecclesia Dei, we agree with them that there is a Pope. Yes, and then we agree with the Ecclesia Dei that the traditional Mass is the good Mass. And now we don't agree with them that it is the only Mass that should be said. You know, but we agree with them that the traditional Mass is better. Of course, it's better because it's the only one that should be. Then the SSPX, we agree with more things. So we agree with the Pope. We can even say together that the Pope is bad, even though they won't be so loud about it on the bad aspects. On the Mass, well, we only use the traditional Mass. But then in his April 15th declaration, Bishop Fele and the SSPX with him say that the new Mass is legitimately promulgated. That we don't agree with. Not only we say it's not legitimately promulgated, it's not even promulgated. The promulgation of Paul VI was invalid. You know. Even technically speaking, because there was a heresy in the decree itself, so Paul VI had to rescind his decree of promulgation and write another one. So, on Archbishop Lefebvre, we agree that Archbishop Lefebvre was nice. So they glorify Archbishop Lefebvre, they make lots of nice photogenic presentations of Archbishop Lefebvre. You can watch them on YouTube. It's nice, it's high def, it's professional. But they are missing out many points of Archbishop Lefebvre. You know. And the fact that Archbishop Lefebvre told us this crisis will last a long time, you must stay away from the Novus Ordo until Rome comes back to tradition. And this is what they refuse to admit from Archbishop Lefebvre. So you see, the Ecclesia Dei say Archbishop Lefebvre is in hell, or he is a schismatic, or he died a schismatic. This is not what the SSPX says about Archbishop Lefebvre, of course, you know, because they buried him recently, they put him back in a beautiful tomb in Econ. So there is a distinction, you know, a clear distinction between Ecclesia Dei and SSPX. They will not reconcile. But again, in the Ecclesia Dei, the conservative Ecclesia Dei will credit Archbishop Lefebvre for them being able to say the traditional Mass. Or that it is the stand of Archbishop Lefebvre early on that enabled them to realize what was going on and become traditional. So the better Ecclesia Dei priests have no qualms into praising Archbishop Lefebvre, you know, unlike their liberal wing. You know. Now, what does the resistance agrees with the resistance? It's stupid to answer. Now, Cassisiacum. We agree with the Cassisiacum on the uninterrupted nature of the apostolic succession. That is what we agree on. That's what drives the Dolanites furious. Because when Bishop Sanborn says there must be an uninterrupted apostolic succession, and he quotes Gérard des Lauriers, who made so many ordinations of bishops. I'm not sure if even Bishop Dolan was ordained by Bishop Gérard des Lauriers or via another bishop. But if Bishop Dolan owes his episcopacy to Bishop Gérard des Lauriers, he should at least admit that this is what Gérard des Lauriers said, for his position. So this is what we agree with Bishop Sanborn, that the papacy is of apostolic institution, that it is visible, and so there must be a visible means to connect ourselves all the way down to St. Peter, to the bestower of the keys of the church, to St. Peter. Now this is interesting. This is the point where we agree with the sedevacantists. And also we agree on the fact that heresy has consequences. The general principle that heresy has consequences on the office, on the possession of the office. Now what we disagree with the sedevacantists is that they go too far, that the office is lost altogether. What falls immediately ipso facto is the liceity of the use of the jurisdiction. So something happens on the office. You are not anymore, you should not be there. It's like when a priest lives in concubinage, he should not exercise as a priest. Now if he says the Mass, it's valid. So we agree on validity, but not. We agree on we don't agree on because they refuse to make this distinction between validity and liceity. And so same with the Dolanites and the CMRI. So we agree with the Dolanites and the CMRI and the Kellyites that heresy has consequences on the holding of an office. If you are a heretic, you should not. But the Dolanites and Kellyites, they say you cannot. It's not just you should not, you cannot. You cannot and should not. Now also the Sanbornites say that. But the difference is that we don't agree with the CMRI and the Dolanites with the uninterrupted apostolic succession, because they exclude it. They say what they will try to make you believe is that there is a sedevacante period. Now we are going. When is it going to stop? Why do you call a sedevacante period a period of 70 years? That's huge. It's not a sedevacante period, and then even in your own opinion, there are no cardinals to elect that pope. Now there are other solutions, they will say, but there is a solution. The other solution is a miracle that designates somebody, a miracle, an apparition, or whatever, and the other one, a supernatural phenomena, that this man has a gift of prophecy, a gift of miracles, and can prove that he is the visible head of the church. That could be a solution. Or that the Pope dies and all the cardinals die, and there is nobody to be put there, and so whoever shall exercise as the Bishop of Rome will become the Pope, because the Pope is the Bishop of Rome. So imagine a nuclear bomb falls on Rome when there is a conclave, when there is a consistory of the Pope with all his cardinals. The bomb falls, and then everybody was there, and they were nuked by the angry bear, and they're all gone. Now later on, there will be a designated candidate to be the Bishop of Rome there. Whoever becomes the Bishop of that place is the Pope. So it would be a Pope without cardinals, without a conclave. But that's the fact. Now, these two solutions are possible. We're heading that way to divine intervention, because Francis and his cardinals are very hard-headed into heresy. Yes, but they refuse any link. They have cut the uninterrupted succession, and this is what the Sanbornites keep on repeating to them. And then we agree with the house church and the schismatics that Christ is God. That we agree. Now from there we will have to rebuild the trust and then rebuild the faith if necessary, and then bring them back to the Catholic Church.
Fatima solution.
So the Fatima solution, that's so now the Fatima solution now is to the fore, because we are entering into the World War III. So in the Novus Ordo, it's excluded. They are excluded, but as the Russian tanks are invading Ukraine, then you have the whole flock of the Ukrainian bishops on their knees in Rome, begging Francis, please consecrate Russia because we are being invaded there, you know. And I think right now the bishops of Poland and Lithuania, Estonia, well, Lithuania especially because Lithuania is a Baltic country which is Catholic, unlike Latvia and Lithuania. Now probably the Lithuanian and Polish, Hungarians and Slovak bishops, Romanians, Bulgarians, now all these Catholic bishops, they are thinking about doing the same as the Ukrainians. Because as NATO is putting troops in Poland and in Lithuania, Russia says, we will retaliate. If you are aggressive, we will come in. And so the next group of bishops to request Pope Francis, Novus Ordo bishops, will be the Polish, and that's coming, certainly. So it's excluded, but as the Russian tanks move in, it comes back in. So Fatima, you know, the Novus Ordo, especially via Cardinal Ratzinger at that time, the Novus Ordo had buried Fatima. They had buried it so well, and they had constructed a false narrative, putting John Paul II in the center, and saying that the consecration was effective. It was done. It was effective. John Paul II is the Fatima Pope. Look, he put the bullet. He put in the crown of Our Lady, and so on, and all these lies. And the fake Sister Lucy says it's over, it's done, there is peace. Gorbachev and everything, and it was all a lie, you know. But now, because the Russian tanks are actually rolling, now Our Lady of Fatima is right in the center. It's amazing. She's so much in the center that even Novus Ordo bishops are on their knees to ask for the consecration of Russia. But Francis is very bad, you know. And so Father Kramer tells us in his first meeting with Putin, Francis replied to the request of Vladimir Vladimirovich, we do not talk about Fatima here. It's no, we do not talk about Fatima here. And that's it. That's why in the second visit of Putin to the Pope, Putin made Francis wait for 2 hours. For 2 hours, Francis was fuming and waiting for the coming of Vladimir Putin. And so you can see in the group picture of the second meeting of the Pope with Putin, Francis was looking completely dejected. Because that's a Putin treatment. Putin does this treatment always when he thinks somebody is an idiot. If he thinks you are an idiot, it will rub your nose. It will make you wait for 2 hours. That's not polite, but that's diplomacy. That's Russian diplomacy. If the Russians think that you are an idiot, they will tell it to you by signs. They will never say it because they are good diplomats, but they will manifest it to you, and that's the way. You can look at the breakfast of Obama with Putin. It's on YouTube. It's fantastic to see. And Obama tries to entertain Putin and to speak, and Putin is there, and he sips his tea, and he looks at him in the eye, and says nothing, you know. So when he thinks you are an idiot, he will make you feel like an idiot, guaranteed, you know. So Francis refuses, you know. And Francis certainly, I don't know yet how Francis is reacting to the beginning of World War III. That would be very interesting to see. But Francis can't stand Putin either. So the relationship is mutual in this respect. Putin does not separate church and state anymore, and Putin stands for the natural order. Whatever Francis loves, you can be sure that Putin hates. So the Fatima solution is excluded. There is no way Russia, via Our Lady, could be the solution for this dying world of ours. Now in the Ecclesia, it's a mixed bag. So some would argue about the Fatima solution, and others won't. They don't want to disturb Francis in his siesta. Yeah. They will not say that those popes are responsible for all the damage that was done. Yeah. Now in the SSPX, also it's a mixed bag. So some priests are convinced that the Fatima solution is the solution. Father Deleuze, Father Labouche, etc. You know. But Bishop Fellay gave a gradual solution to Fatima. He said, if the Pope consecrates Russia, nothing will happen. But gradually, things will happen. So he's a gradualist. Because the theory of Bishop Fellay and now Father Pagliarini, we must join the Novus Ordo to gradually make them better. Yeah. So I think their approach is more a gradual solution. You know? Even though now, as the Russian tanks are moving, they may be moving towards a more perfect Fatima solution. Now for the resistance, the Fatima solution is the only solution. There is no other way, no other solution. You know. Fatima is recognized by the Church. Fatima is backed up by a massive miracle, the miracle of the Sun. There is no doubt Fatima is true. And then the facts are proving Fatima yet again. The facts are there. Fatima is faithful. If it says World War I will end, then it ended, then World War II will start. Anything Fatima has been said by the valid and licit Sister Lucy, you know, until 1958. Anything that was prophesied is coming to pass. Fatima is reliable, and our hope is Our Lady of Fatima. The triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So there is only one solution. The guilty ones in this scenario are the popes, who have put us, all of us, the entire earth is in a state of disarray because they have failed to do their mission. And because the consecrated souls also have failed in their mission to save souls. Now for the sedevacantists, you start with the Cassisiacum. Fatima is difficult to mention. So it's hard for them to mention because they say the Pope is not the Pope or is only a plastic material Pope. You know. So how can a plastic material Pope do a valid consecration of Russia? Not possible. So even for the Cassisiacum, you know, so it's, I think for the Cassisiacum, for Bishop Sanborn, it's difficult for him to mention. You know, he cannot. With his position, he cannot postulate, he cannot ask Francis, consecrate Russia. Whereas in a resistance, this is what we ask. Francis, at least if you consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, you can save your soul. All the evil that you have done so far may be forgiven to you if you do that good thing that everybody is asking from you. But for Bishop Sanborn to ask, to request Francis to consecrate Russia, not possible. Because if he does so, then the Dolomitians attack him even more. You know, and then his constituency, his base will say, "What's happening to you? You are too old. You know, give room to your successor. You know, Bishop Selway." I don't know. Now for the CMRI, Chiliites, Dolomitians, well, it's impossible now. It's excluded. Father Sekada, it's apple and oranges. They try to separate, you know, the message of Fatima with the papacy to keep it separate. How can you say that it's apple and oranges when in Tui and in Fatima, Sister Lucy, Our Lady herself, as related by Sister Lucy, already mentions the Pope? that is her urgent request. How can you say it's apple and oranges? You know, Fatima? No, it's apple and apples. It's lapu, apple. You know, it's the Fatima solution, and that's a big problem for the sedevacantists. Is that the Fatima solution is via a human agent performing his duty, and this is in line with theology. This is in line with salvation in general. God doesn't force His grace on us. There is a free human agent placed at the visible head of the church that has to do his job. You know, God is willing to dispense grace, but it's always via a human channel. Now, that human channel has failed so far for a long time. You know, so, but it's always available. The channel remains available. But heresy in the heart of Francis is proving an obstacle. So just like we say that heresy is an obstacle from us making use of novice order jurisdiction, in the same way, the heresy of Francis, his Masonic beliefs, prevent him from begging a nation state to be consecrated. Because his ideology is the ideology of Freemasonry, let alone his membership, which is probable, you know. And for the schismatics, it's excluded, of course. It's excluded because for them the Pope is, there is no papacy and everything. But that's also where the Fatima solution also come in, is the conversion of Russia. That is, when Russia converts, Russia will recognize a Pope. And then the schism will be ended. So this is what happened in 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell. We said this is fake because Russia has not converted. The schism of Russia is ongoing. So you cannot tell us that Fatima is fulfilled because Our Lady is using the term conversion. Our Lady is not using the term appeasement or, fall of the Soviet Union. She's using the term conversion, which is very specific, because when we expect the conversion of someone, his reintegration within the Catholic Church. So that's basically the positions of the scattered sheep. You know, it's not exhaustive. It's not it's missing the conclavist sedevacantist, missing the Father Kramer's position, and it's missing a few others. But I hope it gives you an idea where to place yourself on the galaxy, on the arms of the galaxy of the scattered sheep of our Lord Jesus Christ in these troubled times. That's it. Father Pfeiffer, I didn't mention him because his problem is a question of validity. It's another question. Now, all sedevacantists, the resistance and the rest, all of us, clearly states that the rite was not performed validly, and also the line of Bishop Webster is invalid for many reasons, especially ties with Palmar de Troya and Father Terrasson. So it's a question. Since it's a question of validity, I didn't broach that question in this exposé. Yes. Thank you very much.
Regular bishop for Asia.
This is nonsense. This is not my problem. It is not my problem. Somebody else's problem. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.